What's up, everybody? Welcome back in. The rules are simple around here. Joe Castiglione retires. The podcast comes back. Sooners on SI podcast, rocking and rolling. Ryan Chapman here. We're joined, as always, by the first one through the wall, the great John Hoover. Boss, how you be?
We're great, man. But glad to be back. I guess, Joe Castiglione retires, and what are we supposed to do? Podcast? Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Let's make it happen. You're repping the Upper Peninsula. You've been. We'll talk. We'll talk
Yeah, you
about
know
the
about the
Michigan trip
UP?
here in a
How
bit.
about that?
We'll talk about the Michigan trip here in a
All right,
little bit. We'll
all right.
we'll try and shoehorn some Wolverines in there. We also got our guy Carson Field, holding down the shop in Norman. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, my friend. It is nice to get a little busier. Obviously, big news with Joe C retiring, football just around the corner, us podcasting again. That means that things are heating up. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we are back. We'll be Wednesday as per usual. One addendum. Next Thursday, we're actually going to go Thursday because Oklahoma will be at SEC Media Days in Atlanta. They go on Wednesday, so we'll do the full recap on Thursday. Otherwise, though, let's waste no time, gentlemen. I was thinking lame Ryan as we look at the calendar on Sunday. It's like, okay, we got two or three little things to do. Ease our way into SEC Media Days next week. Let's see if anyone tries to make any news at Big 12 Media Day. And then at about 9:30 Monday, Pete Thamel strikes the anti-news dump. By the way, thank you everyone for not doing that on 4th of July Friday. That would have sucked. Um, Pete Thamel makes the announcement. Joe Castiglione is retiring, the longtime athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. Not an immediate thing. It's going to be a little bit of a process here. He'll finish out this academic year, let Oklahoma get onto the hiring process. Then he'll hang on for a couple of years as AD emeritus. We found out yesterday on Tuesday that'll be a lot of spearheading fundraising projects, things like that. Before we get into anything else, we were at the press conference yesterday, all that fun stuff. What was your first reaction when the news came down? You're like, oh, well, we are working today. Monday is a working day.
Yeah. So I was scrolling on my phone. I was preparing for a radio hit in Norman with Dari Noka, and I was going over the standings of last year's SEC football, standings and how everybody finished and how many starters were coming back and which teams were going to be the real players this year. And the win total projections were 9.5. Oh my gosh, is nobody going to win 10 in the SEC this year? And ding, Pete Thamel showed up in my timeline, and I was like, okay, never mind. Put all that stuff aside. Me and Dari are not going to talk about win totals or last year's standings. Pretty sure we're going to talk about Joe C. It was okay. There's two ways to look at this, and it's like parenthetically try and fit him inside both. It was a shocker. Like it was like, holy crap, Joe Castiglione's going to retire. And at the same time, I think a lot of us in this industry have been kind of waiting for a piece of news like this. If you get my drift, like he's 67 now. At what point is Joe going to retire? We start asking that question. The game is coming at him, super fast, right? NIL, revenue share, house settlement, all this stuff is coming, changing the game. And he mentioned this yesterday. I thought it was very poignant. The college sports, which we've spent a lifetime building up in this model, has gone this way now. Basically, it's like, we've seen all these coaches retire. Nick Saban, Jay Wright. We've seen at the top of their game, right? And a lot of it is, agents showing up on recruiting visits, right? NIL demands that have nothing to do with playing time or college majors or, the traditional stuff that we think about. Hey, what about the facilities? There's a million things that kids have thought about recruiting wise over the past 100 years as in the NCAA, right? Now all we hear about is NIL this. How much money are you going to give me that? I got to take care of my family. I'm like, I wonder if a 67-year-old athletic director who probably is really tired of going down this road, like a lot of these coaches have shown us, I wonder if he's going to retire at some point soon. And I've been thinking that for probably a year and a half. So in one sense, it surprised the heck out of me. In another sense, it's like, makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely just very interesting. I mean, Joe Castiglione, that's a big name, even from someone that's not from Oklahoma. I've not been covering this team for very long. A lot of people know Joe Castiglione. I mean, he's been doing this since 1998. Entire 21st century, OU has been overseen by Joe Castiglione. So it's going to be a lot different. But on one hand, he talked about yesterday in his press conference about how he became a Sooner and never wanted to leave. Joe Harris, the president of OU, talked about how many other schools during his 26 years at OU tried to pry him away, and he just wouldn't budge. He wanted to be a Sooner. With how much love he has for the school, he wouldn't leave if this athletic program as a whole wasn't in a good place. He must feel very good about the trajectory for each program in this changing landscape that we've kind of touched on with NIL, portal, new facilities. He must think that this program is going in the right direction, or else this would not be the time to leave. So you've got to think that he's very positive about the outlook.
Yeah, Carson and I were there yesterday. We saw Joe Castiglione speak, Oklahoma President Joe Harris, the chair of the board of regents, the Holloway, and it kind of struck me as Carson and I walk in, and it's not just a press conference. There were other admin friends and family of Joe Castiglione, past coaches, and you walk in, you see Sherry Cole and Bob Stoops, and seeing Stoops, which by the way, Carson did track down Bob Stoops. Be sure you head to the website, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. His interview with Bob Stoops and everything Bob had to say about Joe's retirement is up there. Be sure you read that. It's a really good story. Great job by Carson. But it reminded me of how it's like, this feels like the Stoops retirement in kind of a way that you had known for years and years and years. Bob would tell anyone who would listen, hey, I'm not going to die in that chair, right? I'm not going to do I'm 85 years old. I'm doing the Bobby Bowden, Joe Pa battle of who can just hang on long enough to have as many wins, all that stuff. We knew that Bob was like, yeah, I'm going to get this to a point where I feel pretty accomplished, pretty fulfilled, and then I'm going to hand the keys off. And you wondered, were those times coming at the end of 2014? There's the story of Joe and Debo being like, one more time, run this thing back. He gets that shifted right, gets Lincoln Riley, gets the program bounced back in the right direction. And then when he felt like it was in a good spot, he turned off the keys, pulled them out, tossed them to Lincoln, and said, peace. I'll be around if you need me, but for the most part, I'd like to go play some golf. Shout out Brady Trantham. It felt like Joe Castiglione in a very, very similar spot. Like you look at the last 5 years, every athletic department was scratching heads going, how are we going to make it through the pandemic when we can't have our biggest driver of revenue outside of just our TV deal, which is filling our football stadium, filling our basketball arenas, all that stuff. He got Oklahoma through that. Then suddenly, right out of COVID, Hoover and I remember the NCAA court case that was basically like, well, we lost on the NIL stuff. So instead of actually having a plan, we're just going to open this up. And July 1st, 2021, boom, NIL's the thing. And suddenly Spencer Rattler's had a big signing in Chicago, stuff like that. Joe Castiglione got Oklahoma to the SEC. He locked down one of the two biggest TV contract revenue distribution things that you can have in college athletics, that or the Big Ten, something Joe Harris talked about. And he oversaw this transition through. And basically, it feels like he's set up football and men's basketball, your two programs, new OC, going out and getting the material stuff. For Porter Moser, coming off his first NCAA tournament appearance, he sets up the biggest war chest, all that stuff, NIL that Porter could have. Whenever the new AD comes in, it's going to be, okay, if football is bad, that's a decision that you have to make. If it's good, you got that, check mark. Porter makes it to the tournament again, check mark, you're good, and you can get off and roll. And it feels like this was the Stoops version of, I have led everyone through the treacherous waters over the last 5 years, and now the House settlement, what that becomes, as it's ever evolving. Are you going to be employees? You're not going to be employees as student athletes. That is the big problem, but that's a problem every AD is going to have to tackle, and that's a problem that I feel comfortable handing off to some new blood to come in and be the next new voice, the new face leading Oklahoma forward.
Yeah. So you heard Joe Harris yesterday, and Joe Castiglione made reference to it as well. The next athletic director needs to be able to see the future, basically, right? Not necessarily predict what's going to happen, Nostradamus or anything, but you've got to anticipate these sea changes that are coming down the pike. And everybody applauded Joe C. Has applauded Joe C. for that, for his kind of foresight. It's interesting that Harris said 6 years ago, when I got the job 6 years ago, because when word leaked that Oklahoma was going to the SEC was 4 years ago, 2021, right? So makes you wonder how long Joe's been thinking about this. Apparently longer than just that Nebraska game that got moved. That they just wanted to play Nebraska at night. Apparently it's been brewing a little bit longer than that. But he's got this. He's always had this ability to kind of anticipate what's coming down the pike, right? What kind of changes are coming for college athletics? What kind of changes are coming for the Big 12? He had the Big 12. He was one of him. DeLoss Dodds were two of the athletic directors who had Oklahoma and Texas poised to jump to the Pac-12, the Pac-12, Pac-10 years ago, back in 2011, 2012. So he's been kind of on that cutting edge of what's coming, what's going to happen, what might happen, something that we need to prepare for in case it does happen. Having said that, that leads me to this point. He's pretty smart. He looks at the schedule. He knows the SEC is really good. He looks at the Oklahoma schedule and he sees maybe the hardest schedule in the country. OU's kind of a trendy pick to make the playoff. OU's kind of a trendy pick to even challenge to win 10 games, that kind of thing. What if reality happens again and they go 5-7 against that schedule? Does Joe C want to be in that chair to have to hit the eject button on Brent Venables? He absolutely does not want to have to be the one that fires Brent Venables. Brent's smart enough to understand, hey, that's outside of your hands. But it would be tough personally for Joe Castiglione to be the one on record. Yeah, I had to fire Brent Venables, and then I went into retirement. That would suck for him. The other thing is, if we're talking about, we mentioned right before the podcast which sports at OU are getting revenue share and which ones have to fall back strictly on NIL. What if those non-revenue sports like soccer, wrestling, the ones that, struggle to make, the ones that struggle to win, the ones that struggle, volleyball would be one. I guess they've gotten a little better. But the ones that struggle to make any money, they're just kind of a scholarship drain, that kind of thing. Joe doesn't want to have to be the one that has to cut sports, to have to reduce OU sports roster, right? Like we don't offer women's soccer anymore. We don't offer volleyball anymore. We had to cut wrestling because there's, too many scholarships, too much expenditures. We're going to save money for the money that we're putting on football players. He doesn't want to have to be the guy on record that, as that's coming for a lot of schools. It might not be coming for OU, but it might. It might be something that's coming down the pike that he would anticipate and say, you know what? I don't want my name attached to be the guy that said we have to cut these other sports. So there might be some of that at play too in terms of his timing.
It's something too, Carson, that it was asked of Joe Castiglione, like, how has your job changed over the last 5 years? I think and it'll be a conversation we'll get into when we talk about Randall Stephenson here in a second. But the job of an athletic director, specifically like at a school like Oklahoma that has adopted a pro model, quote unquote, for Jim Nagy as the football GM and stuff like that. Like the AD is a different job fundamentally today than it was 3 years ago, than it was 5 years ago, certainly than it was 28 years ago when Joe Castiglione arrived on the front steps of Evans Hall.
Yeah, I mean, to be a successful athletic director in this day and age, I feel like you have to be very malleable. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times already on this podcast, how much college sports are changing, what changes OU might see, whether for better or worse, in the next few years. And I mean, you look at the move to the SEC, some updates to facilities, obviously the construction of Love's Field. Joe Castiglione did a very good job adapting to whatever challenges arose, whatever changed within the complex of college sports. And it kind of makes you wonder how much of a role, obviously, Randall Stephenson's going to have the role in leading the search. But I wonder if Joe Castiglione has any say, if he has any recommendations about who would be similarly malleable, who would be similarly just creative and find new ways to help OU win. Because you look at a lot of college sports these days, it's kind of a bidding war. You're seeing that a lot with Texas Tech, getting Nigeri Kennedy in softball, $2 million, getting a 5-star, I think a top 10 player in the 2027 class. I mean, schools like that just have money. Oregon, for example, Phil Knight money. people are going to outbid OU, and OU has to find ways to be smarter and work around some disadvantages they might have. And that's a big thing that I feel like Castiglione's done a pretty good job of adjusting to. The replacement needs to do the same thing.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, real quick, I want to interject this. You talk about Texas Tech. Our man Ross Dellinger tweeted out a few minutes ago that Texas Tech billionaire booster Cody Campbell is making the rounds here at Big 12 Media Days. He's not just on social media. He's not just, throwing cash out the window like despondent Jesse Pinkman. He's actually going to Big 12 Media Days and representing Texas Tech in some way, form, or fashion. I don't remember Boone Pickens doing that. Boone Pickens saved it for the kickoff of the first game of the year, and then we never heard from Boone again until after the season. So I don't know. It's interesting the way things are changing, and so fast and so drastically too.
Well, if Boone had done that, you imagine we could have got a couple war of words between Boone and Mike Gundy at Big 12 Media Day. We add a little spice to our life. Instead,
oh man, that one time he told me specifically, he said, "I don't really put any thought into what boosters say," and I'm like, the guy whose name's on the stadium behind us.
The only reason that Les Miles and you were able to get this thing going, what do you mean?
Yeah, right.
Don't worry about him. It's just interesting, and that's why I asked Joe Castiglione, when you look into your crystal ball, what's the next frontier? Because we can chronicle, and we just did everything that ADs have had to do the last 5 or 6 years. And I thought it was interesting. He talked a lot about how do we, in whatever this new model becomes, and that's what he was talking about, what you referenced earlier, Hoove, whether it's an employee model, whether it's still somehow they're not employees of the school, but they're still athletes at the school. He talked about how do you blend basically what he's saying is, how do you build a connection between wanting to come play sports at Oklahoma, getting paid what you're worth, and not just being mercenaries that the fans can't talk to? That's summarizing and probably paraphrasing, and if that's not exactly what Joe Castiglione meant, I apologize. That's how I took his answer. But I find that to be very, very interesting. And it's interesting as well that, as you mentioned, Carson, Joe will be an advisor, but not the one recommending, the one that is spearheading the new search that Joseph Harris, OU president, talked about. They're looking for Joe 2.0, but it's going to be Randall Stephenson that is spearheading this. They'll announce the committee here over the coming days or weeks, as Joe Harris talked about. But it opens up a realm of possibilities. You talk about outside the box hire. When you pair what Joseph Harris said yesterday about what they're looking for, plus the fact that Randall Stephenson comes in, what could an outside the box hire look like for Oklahoma when it comes to their new AD?
Yeah, when you put somebody like Randall Stephenson in charge, who comes from AT&T, he's on the board of directors currently at Walmart. I mean, he's making top level decisions for the largest corporation in the world, Walmart, unless I'm forgetting Amazon or whatever. But he comes from a business background. He's got an accounting bachelor's degree and a master's degree from OU in accounting. He is by the numbers, right? He's a passionate OU fan, don't get me wrong, but he is by the numbers. He is black and white. I got about 100 questions yesterday. Which athletic director do you think OU will hire or will poach? Is it Kirby Hocutt, his former Joe C's former guy at OU, is now at Texas Tech, obviously doing some special things at Texas Tech. I wouldn't think so. Not the way that Cody Campbell is running things now in Lubbock. I don't know, maybe. We talked about Zach Selman, off the record and behind the scenes. We've talked about Zach Selman coming back to OU. A Selman? Okay, first of all, OU DNA at the absolute, most boiled down, undiluted, pure OU DNA of anybody, it's a Selman, right? But if you know Lucius and Dewey, and if you knew Leroy, you'd know that the Selman name goes way beyond football. Talking about some quality human beings. He would be perfect for the job. Perfect. Ren Baker is from Oklahoma, has done a bang-up job. He's got some Oklahoma State ties, but he's done a bang-up job at, North Texas and now at West Virginia. And, guys like that would, I'm sure, be interested. But the question is this. Is Randall Stephenson, does he want a college athletic director, right, to come in from another college and run things in a college athletic director sense? Or does he want a CEO? Does he want a big business, corporate minded, somebody who knows, media negotiations, someone who knows contract negotiations, someone who can line up some, big money sponsors? Think about that. Get AT&T in here, sponsor the Sooners. Are you kidding me? Something like that. Just saying, something like that. We might have seen the last of the collegiate athletic director model at OU if Randall Stephenson hires things, kind of the way he wants, if it shakes out that way. And then if it's successful, I see a lot of people jumping on board and doing that with their future athletic directors too. Not predicting it's going to happen. I'm just saying going the traditional AD college route might not be what OU does. OU might go into the corporate sector and go find them a kind of a business CEO, which would be totally weird.
AT&T, for the record, they took the Red River Shootout away from us and made it the Showdown when they took over as the sponsor.
Yeah.
And for that, while Randall Stephenson is doing a lot for the university, that should never be forgotten. Thank you, Dr. Pepper. Red River Shootout. Carson, I guess one of the big questions that I don't even know if we can answer is, when you look at a modern AD, what is the role? Like, what is that going to look like for a sport like baseball or softball that don't have a softball general manager or a baseball general manager? Is it a more traditional AD head coach relationship? But you talk about the pro model for OU's front office for football, which was referenced a couple of times yesterday by President Harris, talking about Jim Nagy, a pro setup. Well, if we take that and really peel it out and take the step back and say, okay, let's extend the pro model out. Is the athletic director more what an NFL franchise would have as your president of the business side of things? That, hey, the GM makes the football stuff, and I guess they're part owner because the owner also has say on if the head coach stays, goes, the GM stays, goes. But also, is that what the university president's going to be? And then the AD is just the business side? Is it a weird hybrid role? I don't really know how to place the athletic director in the new organization flowchart for a football program if people continue to adopt the model that Oklahoma has.
That's a great question, Ryan, and one that I don't know the exact answer to. It's hard to imagine what that's going to look like, the difference between a sport, say baseball, softball, versus having a general manager in football. I feel like football, every team, all 136, whatever it is now, FBS teams are kind of taking advantage of this NIL foundation that they can get in this new day of college athletics. Baseball, softball is not a revenue sport at every school. So, I think there's more of an area to treat it more like that athletic director coach relationship that you kind of touched on a minute ago. So it's hard to exactly know. Maybe we get to the point in college sports where there is a baseball general manager, there is a softball general manager. I don't see that anytime soon for OU, especially with two coaches, Patty Gasso and Skip Johnson, that have done this for a while, are both very successful at OU. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, because it definitely could, and I have no idea what direction Stevenson's going to go with this search, but it is something to consider.
I think it's also interesting. So we say outside the box, which I think a lot of people's minds start to business world, and it's something that is college athletic directors going to reflect what conference commissioner has been for a little while, because you have some guys like Bob Bowlesby. He was from I worked my way through the college AD side of things and then moved into a conference role. But then what started to happen about 2010? Well, the biggest thing for a conference was, how big of a TV deal can you get? Which is why you've gotten different athletic directors. Brett Yormark, or conference commissioners, excuse me, Brett Yormark comes from the business world. Patetti at the Big Ten to replace Kevin Warren comes from the CBS, the business world.
What was the Pac-12 commissioner? Larry
Scott came from the WTA.
Women's tennis, of all things. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a shift there. So that, when I think outside the box, go that way. But then I circle it back around to this, who the OU football GM setup is an outside the box thing as far as let's just model it after the pros. But if you were to say, John, you have a pro style GM, is Jim Nagy an outside the box hire? Is that a very good, predictable hire? A guy that was interviewing for the New York Jets GM job, didn't get that. So if you're saying, I want to build a pro front office, let's go get a pro personnel guy, that to me is a good hire. I wouldn't label that as outside the box. The idea to set it up that way. So maybe we come back around and say, hey, it's just an AD that has AD experience as well as marketing experience. Sounds like Joe Castiglione from his prior years, right? Because that maybe that's the outside the box part of it, is just knowing, hey, I need to focus on the business side of it, even though you get to a name that's well within the college AD world.
Yeah, the question is, does the new person have does he come from a campus, or does he come from a boardroom? Those are the two, for me. Those are the two choices for which way do you want to go, which way do you want to take OU athletics in the future. And the way we're looking at money nowadays, changing hands in college sports, which is so foreign to, the older I get, the further away the amateur model seems, right? It seems like that's college sports now is just corporate banking, finance. I mean, private equity is in the discussion now. Where that's where the game's going. That's where the sport's going. So, point being, Randall Stephenson comes from that world. Would not be surprised if your next athletic director at the University of Oklahoma is someone who has almost zero campus experience, being around student athletes, being around athletes even. Think about that. You might come from a corporation that doesn't even do it. He might be the current CEO at Liquid Drano or something. I don't know.
Someone attached to the PIF. Welcome in. Saudi Arabia. Welcome. You've infiltrated the Premier League. Welcome to college athletics. That would be insane. You bring a live guy over. Let me
golf. Think of the sponsorships the OU golf team would get being tied to live golf, right?
Big time. Let me toss this at you just real quick, Hoover, and then let's go program by program. This was a question asked to me, so I can't claim ownership. It was actually my pal Tyler Neal, who I work with at the franchise. He asked me this yesterday, and it took me a second to go. Not ever crossed my mind, but wouldn't that be a fascinating place this thing goes? He asked, is there a non-zero chance, no matter how small, that Randall Stephenson Dick Cheney's this thing and he's on the search committee for George Bush's vice president, and by the end of the committee he says, your best option is me, I should be the vice president? Is there any chance in the world that Randall Stephenson, to this point, who has refused to accept compensation for Oklahoma, goes, shoot, man, I'm already helping reorganize the athletic department. I'm already helping this. Why should I hire someone? I can just do it for a couple of years and lead through this thing.
Maybe a 0% chance. No, not a 0% chance. He's 65. He's been through the corporate ringer. He's retired from AT&T 5 years ago. He distanced himself from the PGA Tour after they partnered up with, in a small measure, with Live Golf. He said, I don't want anything to do with that. He backed out of that. So I get the feeling that he doesn't really want to. He wouldn't mind carrying that plate around as long as it didn't have too much on it. You know what I mean? The athletic director at Oklahoma is going to have a ton on his plate. So I would say probably no to that.
That was my knee-jerk reaction too, but it was just curious. I hadn't had that. It was not even a thought that had crossed my mind across the last 48 hours.
I will say that's a pretty good model, the Dick Cheney model. I used that with our good friend Buddy Wiley when he called me about 3 times. The franchise was expanding into Tulsa, and he's like, you know of anybody that could do this? And finally, after about a month, I was like, yeah, I could do it. I could do it. And he hired me. So we changed careers.
Not the worst thing in the world. Not the worst thing in the world. So we talked about some of the big picture stuff. Let's just go program by program of the major programs real quick. And Carson, we can start here. The short-term, medium-term stuff that the new AD is going to have to take over. With football, I think it's pretty obvious, two-pronged. First off, does Brent Venables bounce back this year, or are you having to make a big change there? And then otherwise, the other thing, which is something that Joe Castiglione is going to stay on for, the West Side expansion to the stadium, which has been talked about for years and years and years. That includes the suites. That includes underhang, which is a lot of the donor sections, or at one point it was the donor sections. That includes the worst press box in the SEC. One of those spots. Outside of that, are there any other big hurdles that you see for like immediate first? Like, let's just say new AD's hired from year 1 to year 3. What's the big things on the docket for the football program?
I mean, it's just so unpredictable right now. As you mentioned, this is kind of make or break time for Brent Venables, obviously coming off 2 losing seasons, 2 losing seasons in 3 years, not the standard here at OU. So there's so many questions between that, the stadium renovations that you brought up, um, keeping players that say the season doesn't go well, and you see John Mateer transferring out, X player transferring out, star after star leaving. How do they replace that? And it's just, I wouldn't say that there's a negative trajectory for OU football, but it's just so unpredictable at this very moment, I feel like.
Yeah, I
Ryan?
think the flip side of that, who maybe you got some insight on this, would be say things go really well. Your decision at the top is very easy. You're keeping Brent Venables. I think like the next big thing would be if things go really, really well, and Ben Arbuckle is the guy that people believe Ben Arbuckle is, he'll be probably a head coach in 2 or 3 years. I guess the flip side would be is mediating, is Brent Venables running the OC search? Is the GM Jim Nagy running a new OC search? Like I think that that could be the other side is the victim of your success. How do you smooth over everything there when it comes to
Yeah.
truly establishing this model?
Do they have to run everything by Randall Stephenson? Right. The guy who hired the new athletic director. Think about it. You get it. Your I's dotted and your T's crossed with the new AD, and then he's like, you might want to talk to Randall, Mr. Stevenson, about the new athletic or the new offensive coordinator. My question is this: if Joe used the word yesterday and I may have misunderstood, so please correct me if I'm wrong. He said it was the biggest stadium project they've had since replacing Benny Owens's bleachers. Is that what he said?
He talked about the West Side project will be the biggest stadium project that Oklahoma's done. So
There's no way the South Side was changed the entire feel of the stadium. So if you change the West Side, what are you changing? You ripping out the press box, putting in new suites up at the top, I guess, like the East Side. You're going to go through the foundation and tear out those like rusted troughs, the urinals that we all have to stand in when we go in the West Side entrance. You know what I mean? The busted concrete and the rusted metal and all that stuff. All that's got to come out too. They're going to make it all brand new looking. That's because that would be a pretty significant project.
I have to imagine that he was probably looking at it from, and this is not confirmed, I'm just assuming he meant from like a dollars, what the dollars would be put on it, because you'd be talking about there'd be a determination to be made. Do you, and this is the trend with stadiums, do you maybe tick down capacity a little bit to go like chair backs instead of the bleachers? If not, are you replacing the bleachers? You're replacing at least one suite. You're probably expanding concourses again to put in more concession stands. The press box, which is usually when you're just talking about from needs more room for the media side, they're probably going to spruce up the TV booths and the radio booths. There are some suites that are up there. You put
So with the TV and radio booth, just because the window falls out of them when we're up there doing our podcast. I mean,
we do not want to talk about the number of wooden slats that we've had to be like, save this. I don't want to get a report from work or stuff like that. But that becomes, I think, pricey pretty quickly when you're talking about building a big structure on top of the stands already. So I would imagine that you have that, but then you look at some of the other stuff for men's basketball and women's basketball, something Carson that Castiglione talked about. Another thing he's staying on for the three big things: baseball facilities. We'll talk about that here in a second. The West Side expansion, then also whatever the Norman Entertainment District's going to be if it ever gets out of the red tape and all that stuff. But it feels like this portal class has been the biggest war chest that Porter's gotten. If they make the tournament again, how do you continue to sustain that? For women's basketball, they land Aaliyah Chavez. Very different kind of war chest when we talk about the number one overall recruit. How do you work with Ginny to continue to push things so you're not Sweet 16, you're Elite 8, then your Final Four? Those are good problems to have, but it's stuff that the new AD is probably going to be a little bit more hands-on with, Carson.
Yeah, I think we had a consensus in probably around January that this is kind of the swan song for Porter Moser. But to his credit, he really redeemed himself with the last few weeks of SEC play. This portal class with Darian Reed, Xavier Brown, Tay Davis, Nigel Pack. I mean, those are four really good players that the Sooners are adding. At least they have the potential to be really good. So if they can kind of build on what they built the last few weeks of the season, making the tournament, maybe go one round farther this year, that would be huge. And I feel like the stadium's a big thing, or not the stadium, the arena is a big thing for both men's and women's basketball's trajectory just in the future, just trying to lure talent to Norman, Oklahoma. Lloyd Noble Center is not a bad arena, but there are plenty nicer arenas in the SEC and other power programs across the nation. That's got to be a priority if OU wants to have winning basketball programs on both the men's and women's side. You touched on the women. I mean, obviously, they've been a very successful program, Sweet 16, hosting the first two rounds this year in Norman, getting the number one player in Chavez. So, I mean, the trajectory, there's definitely potential for both programs to kind of get better and better each year. You're starting to see more parity in women's basketball opposed to just UConn, Notre Dame, Tennessee winning it every year like it kind of used to be, which works in the Sooners' favor. So there's definitely potential if the new AD really invests in basketball with some facility upgrades. I think both of those teams could be in good hands.
Then you get over to the thing that Joe Castiglione mentioned, that they feel there's great momentum, really, really close to getting baseball rolling as far as finally breaking ground and getting that stuff done. It's basically like you need to reward Skip Johnson with he's done a very, very good job of pushing that thing forward. Now you need to help him take the next step with those facilities. I think that's pretty obvious as far as something that Joe wants to stay on with. But if you can have anybody else that's an excellent fundraiser that can help push that finally across the finish line and get that going, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Love's Field you just got built. Here's the big thing on the softball front that the new AD is going to have to deal with. How long is Patty Gasso going to keep wanting to coach? She obviously has the open door for as long as she wants to, but I don't know if she's able to win a gold medal in 2028 with Team USA. It feels like that might be the perfect thing to say. I have currently a bunch of national championships that you hope you add to between then. I have a gold medal as the head coach and bring gold back to Team USA softball. I don't know what Patty's plan is, but she's already talked about if she has to step away for a period of time to focus on Team USA, that she's got JT Gasso and Jen Rocha in place, who, much like the Bob Stoops situation, when Patty Gasso decides to call it quits, it's going to be shocking for the sticker shock, but it's going to be, she's been, if she goes through 2028, 35 years at Oklahoma, I mean, is it going to be the most shocking thing if coach that's accomplished everything decides to hang it up in the next 4 or 5 years? No, not at all.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about on years ago, Ryan, podcasts. How much longer is Patty going to coach? And then she got that class of 2021 and 4 straight national championships. Oh, she's got this. She's going to get Love's Field built, and then she's going to retire. She's going to turn it over to JT, and then she's going to retire. Right? None of that is even on the rate. Feels like it's on the radar right now.
It'll be interesting there as far as that goes. So what a way for us to blow back through, man. We took a little hiatus. Who have you been vacationing? I managed to leave the country for a little bit, all that stuff. It's been a big welcome. We were going to bring the podcast back this week anyway, and we're going to be doing a lot of prep for SEC Media Days, which we'll get to here in a second. But I guess it makes it a lot easier. It's like, yeah, the A block, Joe Castiglione. Check. It's done.
That's our lead. We did not bury the lead, but yeah, man, it was good to get away a little bit this summer. I have had an unbelievable, what we'll call an off season. You guys know I posted it on my social media, and I'm just gobsmacked, just absolutely blown away. So proud that my alma mater, my high school, asked me to come and speak at their graduation back on May 20th. I rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, probably a couple hundred times, a speech that was close to 20 minutes. Too long. I apologize to the graduates and their families. I know it was too long, just like everything else I do. I talk too much. I write too much. But it was so cool, you guys. I cannot stress what an amazing feeling that was. To be treated like a VIP for 2 days, get a tour of the school, get a tour back behind the scenes of the football facility. It was just amazing. But the coolest part, getting to meet the seniors, was amazing because oh my God, I thought our class was good back in '85. 40 years later, I'm meeting the class of 2025, and those guys are so smart and so full of potential. I can't wait to see what this class does. That was cool too. Getting to speak was cool. 3,000, 4,000 people, whatever it was. I wasn't as nervous as I thought I would be. And I kept waiting for myself to screw up, and I didn't screw up. So I kind of cruised through it because of all the rehearsal. But no doubt the coolest part was when 19 of my friends and family who showed up at the graduation to watch me speak, I had arranged to buy them all dinner after at the local establishment. We're going to call it Applebee's for now because we were eating good in the neighborhood, in the old Hoover neighborhood. And I walked in and they were all sitting together in this one corner of Applebee's and they all stood up and started clapping for me. That was the coolest damn feeling I have ever had in my life, and it'll never be topped. It was so awesome. So, a couple of weeks later, my wife and I drove up to the Great Lakes, spent 8 or 9, 10 days on the road in an RV, which was with our little dog, which was pretty great. But at times, RV life can be a big challenge. But yeah, this is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We stayed 2 nights right here, right up on the tip up at Lake Superior. And then we stayed 3 nights down here, I think, at this one on the Upper Peninsula. And then we crossed down into the Oven Mitt, stayed 2 more nights down on literally, I'm not even exaggerating, one of the top 3 beaches I've ever been on, down on Lake Michigan. Sand, quiet, 70 degrees, sun, no kids running around. It was amazing. Beautiful beach. So
the pictures you were sending back, I was like, who's going to come up to Michigan next year and then never leave?
Yeah, no, it's if we had property up there, we might not come back. It's that beautiful. It's amazing. Such an amazing area, the Great Lakes.
You lived it up this summer. I was just happy that day one of your trip there were not like 2 arrests that we had to get on, because
I was hoping.
Carson, you were not around for that, but Hoover went to Alaska a year ago, and quite literally the second that he crossed over into Canada because he was driving, I'm getting tips and things like that of an arrest, which led to finding the records of another arrest. And I was just like, John, there's this thing called legal liability, and I've done the right stuff, but before I publish it, I just want you to know we're reporting on an arrest record or whatever. And he was just like, "What? I'm in Canada."
I pulled over. So I crossed the border in Canada, and like 5 minutes later, pulled over, and was on the phone with him and Randall, and we were going over the ins and outs, the who's and what's and whys, and I was like, "I think we're good to publish this, guys. I can't see it because I don't have Wi-Fi, I don't have internet, but I trust you." And yeah, it was a big story, big week for us. And I was in Canada. That's why I trust you guys.
Doing the thing. Carson, when are you getting the invite to head back to your high school to give the commencement? Is that on the docket for you?
Yeah, not in a very long time, I don't think. And my graduating class was like 600 people, so I'm not sure I'll ever get that invitation. I'm not quite as cool as John Hoover. Not sure I'll get to that mark. It's a high bar to clear. But yeah, don't think I'll be getting that.
Yeah, we were going through it. Jordan Evans was a year or 2 ahead of me, much more accomplished. I don't know if you've heard of him. Trey Young rolled through. Norman North officially opened up its account. It has not 1, but 2 goals for the U.S. women's national team, thanks to Yasmin Ryan, who played with my sister. So one of those things that I was like, I'm way down the list. Have you ever got nervous where you're just thinking, like, just imagine that it's Bob Stoops in front of me, and imagine that I'm speaking to Bob Stoops, and that'll get it done?
Yeah, it worked out. I tried not to look at anybody's face except the people in the front row. That's the secret.
Makes it happen. Well, that's like the radio stuff. I just imagine I'm just speaking to Eddie. I'm not talking to anybody else, and people are texting him, but I'm just talking to Eddie.
Yeah. It was funny looking out at the students. Like half of them were like, doing this, giving you this thing right here, like, and half of them were just like,
wrap it up. That's what the other.
For the audio version, that was the dead face, dead-eyed, please stop talking so we can go party kind of face that I just made. So
got to get it done. So we enjoyed our break, but like we said, we'll be back on Wednesdays per usual. We'll have the post-game pods. Won't be back next Wednesday though, because we're headed to SEC Media Day. That's Oklahoma Day. We found out yesterday as well, in the mix of everything else going on, we knew Brent Biddles, we headed out there. Duh. We'll also be linking up with new quarterback John Mateer, as well as R. Mason Thomas and Robert Spears Jennings. So next week's pod, Carson and I will be linking up with you Thursday from somewhere in Atlanta, recapping everything there. But I guess, Carson, off the rip, we'll get to the venables of it all here in a second, but it makes sense, right? Bring your Hopefully, first round edge rusher, bring your veteran safety and your new quarterback, the new shiny toys for everyone to break down and get to talk to represent the program on the player front down at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, those picks to me made a lot of sense because I mean John Mateer is the big name, the biggest transfer arguably in the country. Obviously, Nico Iamaleava and Carson Beck were very big, but I mean you could argue that Mateer was the most wanted, most sought after quarterback in the portal this year. Expectations are huge, so that makes a ton of sense. Otherwise, offensively, I mean, it's a lot of other transfers. You see Jaden Ott, you see Giovanni Gibson, Isaiah Satania. I mean, I'm not sure who else they could have brought offensively as a returner from last year. And then you see RSJ, R. Mason Thomas. Both of them were highly productive. I'm really excited to see what R. Mason Thomas does this year because, I mean, he didn't come out of nowhere, but he had a breakout year last year. He is going to be huge, a huge leader for a lot of these other talented defensive linemen that are younger and just kind of someone to look up to. He's kind of the player that I think could be the impact player on the defense this year. So I'm excited to talk to him, see what his thoughts are going into the season.
And we get to talk with Mateer. Just I know that there's a big long story out there about his experience at the Manning Passing Academy, stuff like that, but just kind of continued what that offseason development's been looking like. But I guess, Hoop, when we get to the podium with Brent Venables, it'll be interesting. I'm sure he'll field questions about Joe Castiglione because he has not spoken on that. I'm sure he'll get a typical, hey, you're on the hot seat thoughts, which we've heard his response to that. But outside of that, I wonder if it's going to be asking questions about the offense because right now, you know, to OklahomaSoonersOnSI.com, we're rolling through our pre-camp depth chart series, which kind of serves as where do things stand coming out of spring practice, where the battle is going to be throughout fall camp. And I just did the offensive line one here on Wednesday morning, and it's basically like yeah, maybe not an or at center, but a definite position battle, or it's one of those things where the wide receivers and the offensive line, certainly it's position battles galore with a lot of jobs still up for grabs come fall camp.
Yeah, I'm probably oversimplifying this, but if you're going to bring another offensive player, I guess everybody's limited to 3, although you know Texas is going to bring 6. If everybody's limited to 3, then you know, you got your 3. But if you could bring another, it would probably be Troy Everett, right? I mean, literally none of those other guys. Fabecci probably has got a starting job locked down at right guard, but literally none of those other guys are definitely starting at offense on the offensive line. Probably you've got some guys that are in like the lead or, you know, will be the pick to start camp as the 1A right there. But same with wide receiver, same with tight end. You wouldn't bring any of those guys to media day. So it's a reflection of the defense. The defense is loaded. Brent is probably going to get a lot of questions about the defense being loaded again. You know, you lose Stutzman, you lose Bowman, you lose Downs. But yeah, they've got a good defensive line. They've got some very good linebackers back. They've got some talented defensive backs back. They're going to have to lean on the defense again this year. I think everybody knows that. And that's got to be what Brent focuses on because, hey, he's the defensive coordinator. That's the question that he's going to get a lot of too. You know, how are you going to be a head coach and a DC, the full-time DC, not sharing it with Ted Roof or somebody like that. You're actually the DC. So that's going to be, he'll get I would think he would get a lot of questions about stuff like that personnel wise, as well as Nagy. You know, how much is your relationship? How is that evolving? You know, are you guys back and forth? Is there any push pull? You know, I'd like to get Brent pulled aside for a few minutes and ask him some stuff about Nagy as well.
Yeah, that'd be good, especially because the last time we checked in with him was actually me asking him about it at the Crimson Combine, which was mainly just like, you're about to attack a portal window. How's that gone? All that stuff. And Nagy struck with Jaden Ott and Jake Michael coming in from Stanford immediately. But you can't talk about the recruits still. Oklahoma with a big goose egg as far as in-state guys go. That'll be a really interesting dynamic as far as that was something that Brent Venables was huge about, getting back in Oklahoma schools, stuff like that. And then suddenly Jim Nagy steps in and says, we don't need Mason James in Norman North. We don't need some of these guys. These are not the traits guys. So interested for that dynamic as well. And it's been one of those things, talking about the offense. The other series we're running right now are freshman phenoms as far as 5 guys from this freshman class who could kind of crack in. It's very offense heavy because you look around the defense and go, okay, you got pretty comfortable at defensive end, pretty comfortable at defensive line, linebacker, good, corner, good. You're looking at, okay, could the wide receivers be guys? Then obviously we will be writing about Michael Pasusi, duh. But it's one of those things that it's kind of the reflection of the defense. They've done a pretty good job at bringing that talent through, and the offense, everybody transferred out or was hurt last year. It kind of feels like you were either injured, transferred out, or Trey Everett, who was hurt to start the year and then got going. So it'll be interesting there. And it'll also be interesting, guys, especially maybe to hear Brent Venables' take or maybe some clarification. There was the big freak out that ran around Oklahoma Twitter about Jim Nagy. He appeared on the Triple Option podcast. That's the Fox Sports one. And his comments about, hey, if he's talking about OU's internal grading system, if they had the exact same grade on a 5-star kid and on a 3-star kid, but for OU, it's the exact same grade. You look at the official visits for the 5-star kid. Maybe it's a value play to grab the 3-star. How'd you kind of take those comments, Carson? Because I know that people freaked out and took it to assume, why is OU not going to recruit any 5-stars? Well, it's not quite what Jim Nagy said, but I mean, I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I mean, I think those comments were taken a little bit out of context. Oklahoma's still going to be going after some of the 5-star guys. I actually kind of like Nagy's perspective in trying to find diamonds in the rough because OU, I mean, you look at it financially, they have money, but they don't have Texas A&M oil money. They don't have UT money. They don't have Phil Knight Oregon money. They have money, but they don't have that kind of resources where they can buy most 5-star prospects. They're going to have to get creative, and you're seeing success from that from other programs. You look at a team like Indiana. That is not the richest athletic department. They don't recruit that well as far as stars, rankings go. They made the playoff last year. Arizona State, they have not recruited well in a very long time. They make the playoff last year, take Texas to double overtime. Kansas State's done it for years and been one of the more competitive Big 12 programs. Obviously, OU wants to be better than those teams have been consistently, but there definitely will have to be some sort of ability to find diamonds in the rough. And I think Nagy's definitely someone that can do that. I've seen him on Twitter analyze a lot of film. He analyzed Jaden long before he became a Sooner last year, tweeted out how good he was entering last season at Cal. Now he's a Sooner, got that talent. He's really good at evaluating it. So I think Sooner Nation needs to calm down just a little bit. They're still going to get some big prospects. You see that with Bo Bentley. I don't think it's overly alarming.
Yeah, and I'll add
so
that Oklahoma for 2.5 decades, Bob Stoops didn't out-recruit Mac Brown, right? Mac Brown always had the better recruiting class. Mac Brown always had more 5-stars. Guess who won the game more often than not? Guess who won the Big 12 more than anybody else combined? You know, Oklahoma with those recruiting classes that were good, but not top 3, not number 1 like Mac Brown used to get. So I think that's the model that Oklahoma has to stick to. You're in the SEC now. You're going up against SEC, the best of the best. You're going up against Georgia. You're going up against Alabama. You're going up against Texas and their money. You're going up against, as Carson said, Texas A&M, who hasn't won anything since 1939. World War II hadn't started yet for the United States, but yet they spend that money. They go out and they land those 5-stars. Look at that recruiting class just 3 or 4 years ago, number 1 in the country. And what did that become? Go get the players. I should say, continue to get the players that you think provide value and you think fit your culture at Oklahoma. That's what Jim Nagy's got to do. And Brent Venables has a real handle on that. And I think the staff does as well. And I think Nagy is going to be, I don't think there's going to be a lot of fighting between the head coach and the GM. But I will say I'm a little surprised that there's zero, probably going to finish with 0 okay preps on this OU football team, because that's something, like you said, Ryan, Brent Venables has emphasized, strategized. He's a Kansas guy who played at Kansas State. He knows what in-state talent means as much as anybody. He built the national championship defense that had a bunch of Oklahoma kids or a handful of Oklahoma kids on it. They've won Heisman trophies, right, with guys who were 3-star recruits in the state of Oklahoma. So you can't just shut it off and say there's no recruits here. But, you assess the whole thing big picture wise. Some years in Oklahoma are better than others. This 2026 class might not necessarily be the best, and there might be some other prospects right now that Oklahoma is going after that are better than what you could find at that position for that value, right? In the state of Oklahoma, and you want to beat Alabama for them, you want to beat Texas for them, you want to beat Georgia for them. You're going to have to go out and stick your neck out a little bit and tell these Oklahoma kids you might have to wait till late in the recruiting cycle.
It'll be interesting. It's like what I guess would be an imperfect storm for Jim Nagy, because all along, something that Britt Venables and Jim Nagy have talked about is that his scouting department, they're probably going to have much more of an impact in the 27 class than the 28 class, because for a lot of the 26 kids, you're already down the line. And when you look at the current class, Oklahoma sits 33rd, 3-3 in the 247 Sports team rankings. 15 commits, 7 of those 4 stars, 8 of those graded as 3 stars. So that paired with in-state losses from kids that it looks like Oklahoma backed off of, which will have a heavy Nagy influence, that's going to be there as well. And it's one of those things where if you're going to bring in a pro scouting department, you have to give them not just this year or next year to scout, but then a couple more years to develop that. And Jim Nagy's right that there are NFL guys top to bottom all over the place, right? You can find those guys in FCS. I guess the one thing I'd cut back the other way on is the scouting services are not perfect at all by any means when it comes to, hey, there's a 2-star kid or an unrated kid or a 3-star kid in the NFL. More than anything, though, the last national champions for the 15 years, what do they have more than anybody else? More 5 stars and more 4 stars. Like, they're not that wrong on that. I just also, again, Jim Nagy did not give like a Mike Gundy-esque quote where Gundy's talked about, we're not going to get those guys, so why recruit? We'll take 3 stars into 4 stars, 4 stars into 5 stars. What he said is, if we internally have the same ranking on it and there's a value play, great. That doesn't mean like Michael Pasusi may have had the top ranking in the class a year ago, and if Jim Nagy's involved, they still might have pulled out all the stops to get Michael Pasusi. We just haven't seen that yet, because it seems like these are the Moneyball budget plays kind of around the edges once they've established their relationship with kind of the top targets in this year's class, because Nagy wasn't here till February.
Yep, good point. The fact that he tweeted this out, I think you made mention of it a few minutes ago. He wants to see that full cycle, okay, hi, my name's Jim Nagy. I'm the general manager at University of Oklahoma, to where you sign that kid and bring him in and watch him play as a freshman. That whole cycle, he wants to have one of those, and he hasn't had one yet. So it's going to be next year at this time before he has just one of those.
It'll be interesting to continue to track and continue to keep rolling. It's like a friend of mine put it. If you're going to bring in a GM, you got to let him do GM stuff. You can't freak out at the very first time. We'll see. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect either way. Not telling you that by any means, but to a certain extent, much like with Brett Venables, you need to let him recruit for a year or two. It feels like that's going to be the new, hey, you got to let this front office work for a little bit before they can actually get it there. So
both said the word, used the word multiple times. Nagy and Venables used the word collaborative. So the coaches, the coaching staff, the head coach, and the staff are going to continue to evaluate as they have. They're going to continue to write their own evaluations, make their own assessments, but they're going to feed that information to Jim Nagy and his staff, which he said at last count on that podcast, the Triple Option podcast, 8 or 9 guys is what he wants. I don't think he's quite at 8 or 9 yet, but he's getting there quick. Those two staffs put their heads together on guys that the GM staff, the personnel staff, have identified, and the coaching staff have identified. They put their heads together. They get, compare notes, see what's what, see who agrees with who, and then they put their heads together again on what they disagree on. How can you lose with an extra set of eyes literally on every recruit, right? I mean, that's going to be a great model. It's going to work out. What Oklahoma has to worry about is the whole, is Venables the right guy? Who's the athletic director? How much influence does Randall Stephenson have? It's a lot bigger than just evaluating talent and landing 4 or 5 stars.
It'll be interesting. Also, here's something else, that relationships are everything, but part of being in OU or Oklahoma schools is when they have a 5-star quality kid 3 years from now, you don't want that coaching staff to feel scorned. That's not something that Jim Nagy's crew has to deal with to the same level that you do as a college coach. So all of that stuff will be stuff I'm interested to talk with Brent Venables about next week at SEC Media Day. Carson and I will be there, and as always, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com is your place for all of our SEC Media Day coverage. If you missed any of the, I think it ended up being in all total 11 pieces of content from the Joe Castiglione, Joe Harris press conference, that's all there. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. We're still rolling through our freshman phenom series. We're still running through our depth chart, pre-camp depth chart, all that stuff. Be sure you're following us at Sooners on SI. Be sure you got John at Johnny Hoover. I'm at _ Ryan Chapman, and Carson's at Carson D Field on the X, Twitter, whatever the hell it's called. As always, we'll be continue to flow through there. If you want all the videos, John Hoover Media, that's the YouTube spot to be. But boys, have I left anything else out, or do we need to, Carson and I, get packing for Atlanta?
I think this is going to be the first. I'm trying to remember the last time I didn't go to a media day, and this is just by choice. I'm going to run point kind of here in Studio 88, and I say it's Studio 88 because, of course, Studio 88. That's me. My old high school jersey number. I'm throwing it back to the high school days, you guys. Come on. But no,
did they get you in high school, like the throwback, a new 88 jersey for you? Are you still rocking the throwback around?
Yeah, still rocking the throwback. Even the jersey itself, which is built for shoulder pads, has shrunken to the point where it's a little snug on me. So anyway, but no, I think this is the first time I will have missed attending in person conference media days since like 2001, 2002, maybe. I know, that's crazy. So I didn't even think about that, but I just decided, you know what? Time to hand it over to the next generation. You guys are going to kill it. Carson, have you ever covered a conference media days?
I've covered Mountain West Basketball Media Day. That's it. So this is all new to me. I'm thrilled for this. 16 teams, obviously. I'm from the South, so this is always, I love college football, always been passionate about it. So this is fun. I told you guys before we got on, we're traveling, we're doing a podcast. It feels like fall, and man, I'm excited.
Yeah. 4 days in downtown 4 days in downtown Atlanta with Ryan. You've got almost no chance of coming back without trouble following you. Ryan, take care of him now.
We've got the we won't be hitting up any reputable wing establishments, that's for sure. So we'll avoid those. If you see me in the Battery on Friday, say what's up, and also understand that it might take me a second to recognize who you are, but come say what's up, because we got Braves Yankees on Friday night. That's the treat. You grind, because trust me, Carson, it will be a grind. It's a circus. I think last year they were talking, I can't remember if it was second or third, when you talk about college football playoff, Super Bowl, SEC Media Days. Those are the three largest credentialed football events in the country every single year. So you get over 1,000 credentials issued for SEC Media Day, which is a little bit of a doot to do.
It's a big one. And Ryan's got something. And the playoff?
Well, we'll be at the College Football Hall of Fame, which is one of the coolest. Like, have you ever been, Carson? The College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta is incredible. You might have to maybe like Friday on your way out, when they kind of have broken down all the media day stuff. It is an absolutely incredible museum and a must-have. If you are rolling through anywhere in Atlanta and you're a college football fan, like, absolutely need to stop through, because they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, I've got to check that out.
I think if they still have it, you have to do it. It's an indoor turf little area marked off, and you can kick a field goal through these uprights. Eric Bailey and I were there that was the Tennessee game in 2015, Baker's first year as a starter. And so we were there for that. Yeah, that's right. I put two of them right down the middle, 30-yarders. Come on.
No burrito drama too, which was the most important thing. Yeah, that turfed area is where actually all the press conference stuff is going to be set up at. Like the radio row is going to be on the second floor, where the museum portion, and then that turfed off area is going to be the main stage. You're going to have your SEC Network desk and all that stuff. So it'll be quite the production per usual with the Southeastern Conference.
It was Patrick Queen had his big moment where he basically crapped all over Oklahoma that year before the Peach Bowl. And that was Spencer Rattler's breakout performance as well in the media, which you can still find that video on my YouTube channel. It's one of my most watched YouTube videos of all time.
You got that, and then it's like that and a bunch of softball videos. Anyway, All right, we will be picking up shop. Carson will be wheels up on Sunday, so that content will start coming out Monday. Don't wait till Wednesday. Monday, Greg Sankey takes the podium, and then we'll be tracking down a ton of OU related stuff all week long. We'll be hitting up a bunch of our sister sites to get there. Like Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's going to give his stuff from the podium. We'll get the nitty gritty from the people who cover Ole Miss. What do OU fans need to look out for? All that stuff as they
Brian?
reform. All with everybody on the schedule.
We talked about the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma playing. Is anybody else bringing a transfer quarterback to SEC Media Days this week?
I think
Anybody else?
I think our old friend Jackson Arnold might be popping.
Jackson Arnold's going to be talking for the Auburn Tigers. You think he's going to get any questions from the OU media this week?
I think he might. I think I might hit our old guy Jackson up. I talked to him in the bowels of Baton Rouge. Carson and I both did in the last moment that we talked to Jackson Arnold. It's a little bit of reunion. See the suit game for Mr. R.
Brendan Thompson will be there too for Mississippi State. He's representing the Bulldogs at Big 12 Media Day, so he's probably not going to get as many questions as Jackson.
SEC Media Day is not Big 12. It's another year.
Did I say Big 12?
We can't do it anymore. It's an extra year. It's an extra year. We gotta nix it. We gotta nix it. So,
I was on a radio show yesterday, and the host said, "You going to Big 12 Media Days?" I was like, "Big 12 Media Days is going on right now in Frisco. You're asking me about SEC Media Days in Atlanta. I just did the same thing." Jeez.
Tisk. Well, that is the sign that we probably need to shut this thing down today. We'll talk to you guys next Thursday. Oklahoma Sooners on us side. That's the website. Follow us all the places. Until then, though, be good. Enjoy your summer. We'll talk to you next week.